Welcome to ADJ 100, Introduction to Criminal Justice, Chapter 5, Police and Policing. It's important to remember that at many colleges there are specialized courses in the Introduction to Law Enforcement. In a survey course such as this one, we'll have different chapters that will focus on different topics. This chapter specifically focuses on the police and policing in America. The Bureau of Justice Statistics identifies roughly 18,000 law enforcement and state police agencies in operation in the United States. That's 885,000 sworn officers. 73% of those law enforcement agencies are small. The police are the agency of last resort. The principal task of a police agency is order maintenance. Peacekeeping function is far more important than law enforcement. Law enforcement is a small part of order maintenance. The majority of police time is dedicated to general patrol, service calls, and paperwork. As you can see with the number of departments as of 2019, only 106 police departments in the United States have more than 500 officers. And it's fair to say that the majority of those are state police agencies. If you take 50 state police agencies from that, it leaves us with only 56 larger departments, with various mid-sized departments, but the vast majority are under 25. These would be small sheriff's departments in rural communities, as well as townships. The demographics of all police agencies in the United States are 88% male. And while 12% female looks small, that number has been drastically rising over the past couple of decades. You can see that the majority of officers are also white, with only 12% black, 12% Hispanic, and 3% other. Early American colonists did not employ police. If they did have the police, they were not a formal organization, but more or less volunteers. Police forces were created in the United States in the 1840s. This is just prior to the Civil War. The history of American policing originated in England. Law enforcement in England, the colonial and early American experience, as well as the American police, were all derived from the traditions that came over from England. In order to talk about American policing, it's important to reflect on law enforcement in England. Before the Norman Conquest in 1066, there was no police force. The king created a centralized government based on feudalism. This is where nobles were required to ensure the king's peace in their lands. Persons were appointed to oversee certain sections of the land, and while they had no formal police agencies, they did recruit volunteers to make sure that the peace was kept. A unit of 100 families or shires was created. The shire reeve was responsible for the collection of taxes and maintenance of peace within the shire. The shire reeve became known as the sheriff. The constable performed the clerical duties of the court and housed prisoners awaiting trial. Eventually, peacekeeping became another function. So it's fair to say that some of the first policing in England, which is where the United States pulled their traditions from, some of the first duties would have been tax collection. Town constables within the shire drafted citizens for a watch system. Citizens were required to provide unpaid watch services to patrol for fires and breaches of the peace. It became difficult to find adequate watchmen. Thief takers was a group of men charged with providing police protection in the Bow Street area of London. In the 1820s, Sir Robert Peel proposed the creation of a police force in England. Now, Peel received a tremendous amount of pushback because the English were very hesitant to accept a formalized police system because they feared that the police would overreach. They were paid, uniformed, armed, and disciplined officers. In 1829, Parliament agreed to experiment with a metropolitan police force in London. So Sir Robert Peel was granted his wish. Only this was one of the agreements they had, is that only if this force was to be unarmed. Once policing was established in England, America began to follow suit. Colonial villages had the offices of the constable and or the sheriff. There was no strong central government in early America. And in the 1840s, waves of immigrants arrived in America. 1844, New York City created a police force similar to that of the Metropolitan Police Force of London, but with some differences. The mayor appointed the officers, which made it largely political. They had a weak central administration and local control of American police. So when we compare this to England, which had a strong centralized, with Sir Robert Peel being granted permission by Parliament to start the London police force. In the United States, it was very weak and it was largely political. They did not appoint people based upon what they could do and their commitment to crime control and peacemaking. But in America, they appointed people based on who they know. Again, these early police departments in America were not centrally organized. In other words, there's no centralized group of authority that can hand down directives to the police. And in a sense, we still have that today. While we do have federal police agencies, they do not directly oversee or have authority over a state police agency. And in Virginia, for example, the state police does not have authority over a local sheriff. So we still do not have in America this centralized police force. And in most Western democracies, there are a centralized set of directives that come down from an authority figure to all police agencies. We do not operate that way. For instance, if you drive through Virginia from one end to the other, you may encounter 30 or 40 different agencies with different uniforms, different colors, different cars. The weak administrative structure left city police forces open to manipulation and corruption. In the latter part of the 19th century, a reform to professionalize the police emerged and was led by a guy by the name of Vollmer. And we need to stop having, according to Vollmer, we need to stop having people who are just appointed without any training. Police were given a clear crime control mandate. The professionalism model continued and is present in policing today. According to some historians, however, the push for this reform was directed by the middle class, native-born citizens to gain control over the police and to restrain the growing immigrant population. The functions of police. According to Wilson, in 1968, the role of police can be classified into three separate categories: law enforcement, order maintenance, and service. While most people go into the law enforcement profession focusing on the first set, which is law enforcement, that's actually in real life the minority of what you'll be doing. Mostly it's order maintenance. That could be patrols, that can be meeting with the community, trying to maintain order through a non-violent way. And then of course the service calls, which could be calls for mental illness, missing children, truancy calls. It could be someone is broken down on the highway and need assistance. That's the majority of what police officers actually do. Wilson posited that order maintenance is the most important and the most troublesome. Order maintenance is, of course, according to Wilson, the main purpose of policing. Order maintenance activities include, but are not limited to, settling disputes, dispersing crowds, keeping sidewalks and streets clear. Obviously, there's no criminal activity going on in most of these cases, but it's a majority of what police officers do, and according to Wilson, the most important. Police as a human service agency. To the dismay of a lot of new police recruits who graduate from college or discharge from the military and decide to go into policing, law enforcement is not a lot of what you do in your day-to-day duties. Most of what police do is not criminal law enforcement. Police spend 0.25% of their time interacting with citizens, and only half of that time was dedicated to criminal matters. Many police have responsibilities for safety functions such as search and rescue, animal control, civil defense. Many local agencies, particularly small departments, are consolidated with emergency medical services, or EMTs, and fire services to create a public safety agency. We don't have a lot of those agencies in Virginia, but we do have some. Some mid-sized cities may very well have people so they would not employ fire and rescue and police. Those people would serve in all those roles as needed. The police as crime control agency. The police control crime in two ways: reactive and proactive. Reactive is when you remain at the station, watching television and cleaning while waiting a call. Sometimes people say that the police seem as if they're loitering. They're just sitting and waiting, but that's part of what police work is about, is you wait on a call and then you react. So that's a reactive police department. Proactive police departments use its own initiative to aggressively seek out crimes. Example, this department would resemble the vice squad, and the officers would be out in the field seeking out crime. In the United States, police are more reactive than proactive. The police is a peacekeeping agency. Peacekeeping means the maintenance of order. Police control disruptions such as fights and riots. They maintain traffic flow. They protect and enhance orderly social interactions. Disorder is non-criminal. Order maintenance is the most common activity of police officers, but is also the least consensual part of the police task. Order maintenance ensures the routine function of society, but it has been observed that crime control remains the core mission of police in the United States. Police officers perform a variety of roles. Police management. Organizational options were limited when police departments came into being in the mid-1800s. The only organizational model available that allowed control of large groups of personnel was the military model. For this reason, the police often adopted a paramilitary structure with ranks and change of command. You see today captains and colonels and majors and corporals and sergeants within police. In the military model, information flows up the chain of command from the street officers to the police administrator or chiefs, while orders flow down the chain to the street officer. This enables the police to meet their conflicting functions in a routine manner. In practice, however, the structure of policing is different from the military model. The reality is that officers on the streets must react to a variety of situations, and it's not practical for officers to report every call and await instructions from their supervisors. So typically you would have a frontline police officer or a sergeant in policing with much more authority than what you would see the equivalent rank in the military have. With the advent of the automobile and changes in American cities, policing became increasingly bureaucratic. New communication tools, such as the radio and the telephone, increased demand for police services. A relatively new approach in terms of American policing is what's called community policing. Community-oriented policing is an approach to policing that relies on community definitions of police functions and a partnership between the police and the community in the production of public safety. It engages the public and leads to more effective informal social control. Community-oriented policing has supported decentralized organization in police agencies, alternative patrol strategies, and resource allocation, and increased police involvement in civic issues. Evidence suggests that community-oriented policing improves citizen satisfaction with the police. The implementation of policing has not always been easy in all departments and has rarely been implemented completely. Most often, departments have adopted the most visible and easily attainable aspects of community policing without making the fundamental organizational changes needed for community policing to truly become the new policing orthodoxy which it was envisioned. 3 obstacles to the implementation of community policing is the lack of resources, time constraints, and cultural resistance from within the police department. Most American agencies exist at the local level. The focus of police organization and administration is to standardize the use of civil force. The police must weigh and mandate to control behavior against the requirement that they respect individual rights. Police officers have more discretion than administrators do, so standard operating procedures were instituted. This is typically called a general orders, which is just a set of rules, typically in a book or online throughout an app that officers have access to. If they want to know and have direction, these are written directions that they do not have to make a phone call or call someone within their chain of command. They can get that direction from those written rules. These rules affect how officers decide to handle cases. Today, the majority of police departments prepare officers through what's called a field training program. Police specialization. Large departments use specialization to assign officers to various tasks. Police specialization divides tasks into special units or divisions, and there are four basic elements, and that is administration, communication, patrol, as well as internal review. Police specialization could also be your defensive tactics instructors, firearms instructors. In the Virginia State Police, which is the agency that I worked, we also had polygraph examiners, which would be a special agent who worked a lie detector. You could very well be on a drug task force. You could work drug diversion, which would be working pharmaceutical companies or doctors. You could be a motor carrier unit, who's a specialist who can enforce federal laws on commercial motor vehicle traffic safety. All these different specialties allow officers to get specialized training rather than everyone have to learn every aspect. So with that being said, it's important to note that sometimes smaller departments may have better skilled officers because they're having to wear so many hats, and they basically have to do it all within a small agency, say of 8 to 12 officers, which is a typical town department. They don't have enough people to specialize, so they all have to do various things. The greatest influence on what officers do is the product of their police organization. Officers in departments that focus on more proactive and aggressive crime control experience more assaults. The organization constrains the amount of discretion exercised by each officer. Smaller departments and those with tighter regulations regarding officer discretion in the use of force were found to have experienced less lethal force incidents by their officers. Selection of police officers. Police officers are ordinary people entrusted with extraordinary power. Police selection typically involves a number of steps that are designed to produce the best qualified officers. The screening out model is not as effective as one that seeks to identify and retain good candidates. Written examinations may not adequately identify the best candidates. Only 15% of state and local law enforcement agencies specifically target recruits with a 4-year college degree. There's varying amount of research that people with a degree see their job more positively, are more engaged in crime fighting, and more accepting of the community. Traditional officer selection practices, such as physical agility testing, still work to exclude qualified female and minority candidates. Data show that female and minority group members make good police officers. However, only 21% of law enforcement agencies have recruitment efforts targeted at female and minority candidates. Police culture. Many observers have identified a distinct police culture in which officers share a widely accepted set of attitudes, values, and occupational norms. Police often isolate themselves from other members of society and are loyal to each other when questioned by outsiders. Officers tend to be more conservative and conformist as compared to the rest of society. I think the big question here could be, are these the type of people who are drawn to policing, or does policing change these people and make them more conservative and more conformist?